Hey everyone, Larry Walsh here, Channelnomics, and I'm here to tell you that I think we've hit peak ecosystem. I'll tell you why. I hear a lot of chatter about ecosystems. A lot of vendors and a lot of channel chiefs are looking at ecosystems as a means of improving their go-to-market activities and yielding greater returns. So when I see a book on the topic, I jump at the opportunity to learn, particularly when it's written by a prestigious analyst firm. Now they say you should never judge a book by its cover. Unfortunately, that's what I did here. I judged this book, The Ecosystem Economy, by its cover, and I was wrong. I mean, yes, it was written by two smart people at McKinsey, and I believed it would provide valuable insights and direction on this important trend, but I was wrong. It's a dreadful book. I mean, I read a lot of books. I read good books and bad books, but rarely do they make me angry. In this book right here made me angry at almost every turn. I read this book so you wouldn't have to, so you can thank me now. Um, the Ecosystem Economy by Venkat, Atlur, and Miklos Dietz promises to explain how the economy is transforming around ecosystems and will soon be centered on them, how it's breaking down the silos between different verticals to create these integrated applications, these integrated systems. And this isn't just applicable to technology, this is across the entire spectrum of industries. Before we dive into that, I think it's important though to define what an ecosystem is, because it's a mystery to many people. And this is a recurring conversation around the channel: is that what exactly is an ecosystem? What are we really talking about? An ecosystem, in its simplest form, is a collection of products or companies with interoperable products that can integrate with one another to create systems or a greater product that has a value greater than the sum of its parts. Kind of simple, right? Um, The Ecosystem Economy, the book, somewhat agrees with that definition, but it expands upon it to say that ecosystems are somewhat communal collectives in which every participant benefits from the collaboration. They don't come right out and say it. The authors don't come right out and say that every participant has equity in the ecosystem relationship and the ecosystem outcomes, but they strongly imply it. Um, as we all know, ecosystems don't work that way. Ecosystems are extraordinarily opportunistic. They're built on interoperability, but they're also built on choice. As a reseller or even a vendor participating in an ecosystem, I have the ability to pick and choose from the different types of companies that are in this collective to create the system that has the greatest value for myself as well as my customer. Um, they are not persistent. At least most ecosystems and most ecosystem relationships aren't really persistent today. So therefore, we don't have predictable returns. The lack of equity is really shouldn't be surprising. Nobody should expect to have an equal return without giving an equal contribution. But one of the things that the authors really do drive home is that ecosystems are about collecting the non-monetary benefits as well, to learn from the experiences of the value that the customers receive and the experiences that they have with the ecosystem product. And that intelligence that comes back should be shared equally so that everyone can improve and contribute more back into the ecosystem. Again, it's a great idea, but it's one that's not really practical in the real world. At least I haven't seen it work that way yet. Um, the authors of this book really do go to great lengths to draw distinctions between ecosystems and conventional go-to-market models like indirect channels and conglomerates and marketplaces. Um, the examples they give, the illustrations they give, are rather torturous. Uh, at one point, they describe supermarkets as an example of an ecosystem because people can go to supermarkets, they're aggregation points, they can buy different food products and different foodstuffs to create a greater system, a meal. But then they'll say a marketplace like Amazon isn't an ecosystem. They rightly say conglomerates are an ecosystem because they're a collection of companies that just plug into a common management framework. But then they describe Disney, a media and entertainment conglomerate, as an example of an ecosystem, or at least a prototypical ecosystem. Um, and that's why I say ecosystems aren't new. They've been around for a long time. In fact, they point to Apple's launch of the iPhone as the birth of the modern ecosystem. So go back to 2007 and the launch of the iPhone. And the iPhone was not just revolutionary because of its form factor, but because of the applications on it. And they talk about how Steve Jobs didn't want to open up the iPhone to third party developers, but relented because Apple just did not have the capacity to build all the applications that they needed. Um, they write, suddenly, Apple was no longer just a computer maker that branched into mobile phones. It was a platform operator for the multitude of innovative software developers and other digital businesses. No kidding. It was like that before with the Macintosh too. Let's think about it. The Macintosh had not just Apple applications, but also the applications of third-party providers. And it also had a network of resellers. It had a network of service providers. Now, we should give Apple credit where credit's due. And Steve Jobs, the company that Steve Jobs created, has earned a lot of accolades that richly deserved as well. However, creating ecosystems isn't one of them. In fact, the authors even point to the fact that Apple was emulating a model that had been in place for decades. And who created that model? Microsoft. So go back to the early 80s and the late 70s at the birth of the PC era. Microsoft and IBM practically created the modern channel, which was a collection, a constellation of developers and application publishers and resellers and distributors and service providers, a bunch of different companies that was built around this idea that Bill Gates had about having a PC on every desktop. Now, books that present themselves as expert sources should come with evidence, and this book has a lot of evidence to support its assertions. Um, a lot of it is faulty. I'm not going to say it's all wrong. A lot of it is faulty, but one of the things I'm just going to point to as a litmus test of its credibility is the value of ecosystems. Now, the authors of this book say that ecosystems today generate $4 trillion in economic activity every year. And they say over the next 10 to 20 years, that value, that number is going to climb to 197 trillion to 227 trillion dollars annually. They don't say in 10 years or 20 years, they just say 10 to 20 years. By their reckoning, the current ecosystem economy is representing about 4% of the global economic output. Now, let's assume that over the next 20 years, let's go to their extreme time period and give them a little bit of wiggle room here. Let's assume over the next 20 years, the global economy continues to grow uninterrupted, no recessions, uninterrupted at 3.5% annually. That's what it's projected to do this year. So let's just say it's going to steam along at that rate in perpetuity. At that rate, the global economy will be somewhere around $195 trillion by 2041. That means ecosystems will represent 101% of the global economic output. A little impossible. Now, let's say they'll give it another scenario and say that the economy will grow uninterrupted for 20 years at 5% annually. At that rate, by the time we get to 2041, 20 years from now, ecosystems will represent 88% of economic output. Again, it's a huge and astronomical number that is almost unbelievable. You know, perhaps they were just trying to illustrate how how significant or how impactful ecosystems are going to have on their transformative nature, the transformative value. um, they point to this. They really do want us to believe that ecosystems are going to change everything and break down the silos that we have today, but they completely look past that those silos don't exist. Yes, we categorize things into different verticals, construction and manufacturing and healthcare and financial services. But none of these verticals are independent of one another. They are all interdependent already. We have numerous examples of how general contractors bring in the disciplines and the products of different verticals to create products or create output. We have this in the channel today. I mean, resellers do this on a daily basis where they collect products and services from different suppliers to create systems that have value to their customers and meet their customers' needs or solve their customers' problems. If we look to managed service providers that have been around for 25 years, these companies are aggregation points of technologies. They take the applications, they take the resources of vendors, and they create their own technology stacks independently that deliver services down to their customers. So it's not like this is something that is revolutionary. It's here, it's been here for a while. Now, this book does have some merits. It does provide some prescriptive guidance, on how ecosystems should be formed, the roles and responsibilities of those who act in them, and what the outcomes could or should be. Much of the good stuff, though, is buried in these inflated value statements and these visionary type of descriptions and this hyperbolic padding of how these other trends are going to necessitate ecosystems coming together. Um, it's just laborious to read through what is really a small book. The authors do get some things right. They do get right that ecosystems do require direction. They do require the interaction between orchestrators and participants, but that's true in everything we do. I mean, in channels today, we have a lot of collaboration and back and forth between vendors and resellers. Now, I've been saying this for a while that ecosystems aren't new. Are they a thing? Is this a trend? Yeah, they are. The ecosystems are real. They're not new though. We've been living and operating in ecosystems since the days of Babylon. Our legacy and contemporary channels are ecosystems in and of themselves. Technology is evolving to make the management and the orchestration of ecosystems more efficient and more effective. But will this have this true transformative effect? Maybe. I mean, making things more efficient is a good thing, but what we're going to get on the other side of this may not look so dissimilar to what we have today. Um, the market loves the idea of ecosystems. The channel loves the idea of ecosystems, um, but we're greatly confused about the ecosystem's meanings, the structures, the managements that's required, the systems that are going to be necessary to make them happen. Books like The Ecosystem Economy, much like the growing chorus of ecosystem evangelists and scientists, I don't know what that is, um, aren't helping in providing real guidance on this. Their proclamations and their conflagration of trends really are just adding to more of the confusion. This book is a great example of adding to that confusion. Now, Channelnomics is working on some frameworks and guidance around ecosystems. Like I said, we believe this is a thing. It's been around for a while, but it doesn't mean that we can't improve upon the idea. So we're going to be coming out with some new material in the coming weeks and months. So please keep checking back with us for these new releases, as well as the other things that we do to help the channel improve their output. Um, in the meantime, if you're looking for guidance and direction on what ecosystems mean and what you're supposed to get out of them, don't look for it in this book. All right, folks, that's about it for now. If you like what we're doing here on In the Margins, please hit like, hit subscribe, check out our other podcasts here at Channelnomics, Changing Channels and The Network Effect. And again, check out all the great resources we have. We just released our annual channel forecast report. It's all available on channelnomics.com. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.